Welcome back to the channel. If you guys haven't noticed, in the past week we've uploaded reviews for both Maze Runner and the second one, Scorch Trials, to lead up to the release of the Maze Runner Death Cure, which came out this weekend.
This is the third and final movie in this trilogy that is based off of the James Dashner books. Short synopsis of what we thought of the first two. First one's good, second one not so good. So we were up in the air about how this one was going to do.
But as always, we are big fans of Dylan O'Brien, and we've been relatively, medium-sized fans of the franchise as a whole with the not-so-stellar second one. We were hoping that this one turned out well. And so, let's hop into our review.
Which will be spoiler-free, so if you have not seen this yet, you won't get spoiled. In short, we actually really enjoyed this movie a lot more than the second one, and maybe even a little bit more than the first one. I'm not 100% sure yet, but it was pretty good.
After the rocky second entry, this third one seems to do a U-turn creatively, which I think ended up being really good for this finale. Let's start off by hopping into the performances. Obviously the main character is Dylan O'Brien playing Thomas, and I think he does a great job in this movie.
Especially coming back from a major accident at the beginning of filming this movie. If you haven't watched, I believe we mentioned in our Scorch Trials review, Dylan O'Brien had a very large accident on set for this film and had to be hospitalized for months. He had to have facial reconstructive surgery. It was a big deal. And I think he came back really strong after that.
Yeah, he got hit by a Jeep, hard. He had to go through a bunch of surgeries and everything, and then come back and finish this movie. And I really don't think it affects the performance at all. In fact, I think he does a great job throughout. You really can't tell any before-after scenes, and I was curious if, the performance would shift a little bit, taking such a long break in between, but it didn't.
Another thing we discussed about the characters and performances in this film is that it just seemed like everybody stepped up their acting game, and I'm not sure if that 100% had to do with them as actors developing. I'm sure that was a big piece of it, but I also think it was the writing and directing, which is strange because we feel like the three movies in this franchise all feel like they were directed by different people, but they're all directed by the same person. It's very strange.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things when it comes to the characters is there is a lot of unspoken acting in this movie. Lots of things where they prefer to let the actors act and show you what they're feeling and what's going on in a scene, and I think it pays off for a lot of characters.
And it's definitely different from, I think, the first two movies. The first movie, you have a lot of explanation going on just to establish the world, which was needed. And then the second one felt a little too fast-paced for you to be able to sit in those quieter moments where people aren't talking or a big action scene isn't happening. And I think that this movie found a good balance between those, where it explains things in a relatively good way. We'll talk about a few ways where it doesn't well. And also, it gives you those moments of being able to sit and feel.
Talking about this movie making a creative U-turn is in the second film, they suddenly start throwing all these characters at you, character, and then trying to make you care about them, and it just didn't work in the Scorch Trials. And this movie tends to do the opposite. Right after the beginning, you kind of see where all those characters they introduced in the second one are at, and then quickly go, okay, but we're not going to care about any of those people, and we're going to focus on the core couple people, and it has, Thomas and Newt, and the other guy, I don't know his name. No, because they're going to save Nino.
Fry.
Right? Yeah, I think so. And so those three characters go off, and then they end up being joined up by two more. So you really have a pretty small group of characters that they get to focus on and spend time with. And I think it really pays off for the film.
Another stark contrast from Scorch Trials was the fact that I felt like the relationships in this movie were much more well done. I actually felt a lot of it. I cried, guys. It was sad.
There was
a lot of stuff that happened. But I felt like the development between characters and the relationships between those people were very well done and fleshed out, whereas in the first one, you don't really have a lot of time for that. You get a little bit, and then the second one just was too rushed to have time.
Continuing on the contrasts with this movie and the second entry, the villains in this are much more fleshed out than previously. I think in number one, we mentioned in our review that they're almost non-existent throughout the film. And throughout the second one, they suddenly pop up, but they're kind of just the stereotypical, we're evil. And I think this film definitely takes the time to make you see their side of things a lot more.
Well, you also have some aspects of the villain come out of the woodwork towards the end that I wasn't expecting, and that was a nice surprise, is really all I can say without being spoilery.
Yeah, I definitely think there were some good surprises in there, but I think having villains that get screen time that also have some sympathetic like reasonings for what they do are always going to be stronger than like the mysterious like never on screen evil person, and I think it pays off to kind of raise the stakes for this movie.
In regards to the plot, we're not going to be able to talk about very many details because this is a third in a trilogy and we're trying not to spoil anything for you, including the first and second ones. But I think that the plot for this was pretty well done. You definitely had major acts going on that were very clear cut, in my opinion, and flowed pretty seamlessly from one set piece to another. And it made it a really enjoyable viewing experience. And you had the, like we mentioned, the right calmer moments, quieter moments, moments to let you feel while having these huge action pieces. The first 10 minutes of this film were fantastic.
Yeah, it was really good, and it was a giant action piece. But then after that, it immediately slows down and lets you kind of feel and work with these characters some more. And overall, yeah, this plot just does a really good job. We said in the second movie, it felt like they didn't know what to do with it, and it ended up being very generic, like post-apocalyptic. And I felt like they kind of embraced the Maze Runner, I guess, idea with this one and really the world. And I think you get to enjoy a lot more of that in this film. We did, however, feel like this movie, especially towards the end, felt a little long. It clocks in like at around like 2.5 hours.
I think it's a little over 2.5 hours.
Maybe a little over that. And so it does start to feel pretty long towards the end and you start to get a little antsy in your seat. However, I'm not quite sure what they could have taken out.
Yeah, it's one of those things, it's what I like to call the Return of the King problem, where there's just like 5 different endings, but like all 5 of those are important for wrapping up the storyline, but it just like you get to the part and you're like, oh, the movie's about to end. Oh, just kidding, we have more. Oh, now it's about to, oh, just kidding, now we have more. That's kind of what happened.
Yeah, so while I enjoyed everything I saw and it felt like everything was necessary, yeah, I will say it was a long movie and it didn't like necessarily feel like it had to be that long, but everything that was on screen kind of needed to be there. It's just maybe they could have done it in a more concise way.
We also wanted to mention some more of the technical aspects to the filming style of this movie, things like cinematography, etc. I actually think the cinematography in this was pretty good for what it is. I also think that the CGI was surprisingly good for such huge action pieces that we had and such on a grand scale of things exploding and things going wrong.
I would say immediately right off the back, this movie opens with a big like panning shot and it's really pretty, but you also get to see like the world and how torn up it is. And while I feel like the Scorch trials like tried to do that same exact opening shot, it felt weird and like the CGI felt cheap, and I think it just works better in this film, and all the shots they take the time with and they let the shots sit for a minute. And I think that's important because the second film's editing was horrible.
It just in general felt like this movie had a little bit more love put into it. Something that I noticed that is probably a minor to most people or most viewers, but like the set design and also the wardrobe design I think was really meticulous and well done. And there's nothing amazing, like there's no huge like, I don't know, uniform type things that are stunning, but I don't know, just as we were watching it I was like, oh, I don't know, it just fit well.
Yeah, I feel like that might be something you pick up on multiple watches, that as you watch you go, oh, there's little details, because I caught a couple, and I even mentioned to her in theater, like, one of which is like one character's makeup job as things progress and they're, you know, and an infection spreads, you see it and it's so subtle, but you pick up as it changes over scenes, and so that way they can tell you how it's going instead of having, you know, the character have to stop and be like, I'm doing worse. And stuff like that and lends itself to like a clever watching experience.
There was also some very close-up shots of some pretty good SFX makeup that I thought was extremely well done and pretty seamless on camera. I couldn't tell where the CGI started and stopped compared to the actual makeup and blending. And as someone who's interested in makeup and a little bit of SFX, I just found that really cool and really well done.
Overall, we really enjoyed this film. I think, like Brittany said, it just feels like they put a little bit more love into it and creatively taking their time to build a better movie. Maybe having that year while Dylan recovered allowed them to spend that time on the film working on it, because it just feels like they got to spend some good time on this, and it ends up raising like the emotional stakes, raising the amount of fun I had watching it, and it actually exceeded my expectations.
I completely agree. This is also a really good way to wrap up a story. I find that sometimes a movie or any type of media, including books, comics, etc., have trouble wrapping up really epic storylines, and I think that this did that very well. It wrapped everybody up in a satisfying way, I think so, without fan servicing, at least in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, I was just very satisfied leaving that theater. This is definitely a movie I would consider rewatching just for pure enjoyment. As always, we want to know what your thoughts on this movie are. I think that this series has kind of been a little divisive among critics and film fans, just because it is a typical YA dystopian type story, so you're going to have people who love it, you're going to have people who hate it. It's going to happen. Let us know which camp you fall into, or if you fall somewhere in the middle. If you like our movie reviews and liked this video, please give us a thumbs up down below, as well as subscribe if you haven't yet. We would love to have you join our BS Review family. We love to talk about movies and all things geeky, so come join us in that. And we do have a lot of other videos that aren't just movie reviews. We have comic reviews, TV show reviews, other fun videos like top fives, etc. If you want to check out any of those that we have already done, we'll link them over here for you. And as always, we will see you in our next video. Bye!